the Around the NFL podcast. There's a quiet storm brewing.
From the Chris Wessling podcast studio, it's Around the NFL. I'm Dan Hanzus. Got heroes here, always do. Gregg Rosenthal, Marc Sessler. People should know. Well, speaking of behind blue eyes with Belichick on our last show, Mark's got the icy blues. Sometimes there's still a storm that can rage. But the nickname doesn't fit quite as well as it did 5, 6, 7 years ago. It will continue to be your nickname on a level.
Yeah.
But the quiet storm is a different chapter in the Marc Sessler life on a certain level.
I mean, I'd say it bubbles to the surface less than it used to. And I acknowledge that. I tried to work on some things. And especially when we have a special guest in studio, I try to keep a lid on some of my temper.
Not for me.
Wait, let me introduce
Okay, I'm sorry.
our very special guest in studio.
There is no such thing as momentum. He is Patrick Claybon. He has all the answers.
What do you think?
Great.
Patrick Claybon, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey.
Pat, what do you think about whether or not we agree with you or I agree with you or the outside world agrees with you on momentum? What do you feel about the idea of momentum and its existence becoming a central tenet of your public face, in a way?
I guess it's like, Patrick is involved in another dumb argument, this time with the planet. It happens all the time in many aspects of my life. I'm glad people are thinking about me at all in any, and so especially when it comes to this, where if I've caused anybody, whether they believe or don't or whatever, to just think about, reality and the way things work.
Ooh, I like
then,
this.
mission
Your
accomplished.
reality.
Yeah, your own personal reality. And,
Have you ever had a moment like in the middle of the night where you've been like, oh, I do believe in momentum?
No.
How about this? And this is a little meta. Have you ever thought about the idea your beliefs or lack of belief in momentum has gained momentum
That's
within
a
your
problem.
own life?
That's a problem.
No, I mean, I believe in cause and effect. This thing that comes up, even when I don't bring it up, right? Like we're talking about it now, is a result of people thinking, and that's good, and really, if we want to go before we get to that, because I'll
Just
lose,
go. This is what the podcast is.
I'll lose track of everything. I think the quiet storm is always brewing.
Oh.
My issue is with the way that society might force the storm to be quiet, and I don't want that. I want the storm to be out. I want Marc Sessler to be
Give
Marc
that up.
Sessler 24 hours a day.
Thank you.
I just need to get that
I'll
out.
take that to heart. I'm not sure that Dan and Greg need it 24 hours a day. But
That
No, but
sounds dangerous.
I feel like literally the last time we were in this podcast studio, or maybe it was Wednesday last week, there was some poking of the bear, and the storm was coming out just last week.
Oh, well, maybe it's still.
I mean, it's like I said. I think it kind of is like nature's law in America.
Wasn't
It gets a little stormier
wasn't
in like
thrilled with-
November, December, January.
Right, how the mock draft.
And let it also be stated that the dissipation of the quiet storm, or of it moving out to sea, from my perspective, is not me even saying, Patrick, that's a good or bad thing. It's just more me being a Marc Sessler meteorologist and being like, right now it seems like the storm is out to sea. Is it permanently out? Could it come back in as a what do they call it? The highest level hurricane?
At most, we've got like a 10-day weather
Category
forecast.
five.
Category 5, Cat 5?
Yeah, I mean, 7-day weekly forecast. We don't know what's after that week.
Where we stand on weather, by the way? We in on the weathermen now?
I mean,
We've
we
been-
live in LA. I literally
Yeah.
it bothers me that anyone in LA is ever looking at the weather on any level.
We've
We've got like 82 weather ladies on all these stations telling us what's going to
Got a
happen.
lot of weather left.
we had a run there.
Yeah, come on, dude.
I'm just saying, I don't. Oh, it's raining.
Like
Yeah.
the old 72
Oh,
and sunny all the
so
time
it's
narrative.
It's raining,
is not,
so everyone's driving 25 miles slower
To-
and acting like they've never seen, the elements.
To those of us who have logged a decade
old
now
canard.
and are spoiled rotten, that was weather to us. That
In fairness, I lived on the East Coast a long time.
Give me a snow day.
It does not rain for 4 straight days at any point, like without stopping on the East Coast. Some crazy things are happening. Crazy things are happening.
That's it. There's been some storms. Not all
weather
been
momentum,
quiet.
momentum on the weather scenario there. Things are changing.
See how it's like a
We're Greg.
Seinfeld episode. Everything's connected. All right. Today is Around the AFC in 48 minutes. Feels like we just did one of these episodes.
We did almost just do.
Maybe speaks to a lack of originality, but they are very effective in their goal, which is, and I get it.
We don't usually do a late free agency.
I didn't think
one.
so.
That was an extra one. Yeah.
That's why it was a little bit on my radar. However, I love these episodes, and I know the listeners love them because when you talk, for instance, we just did our winners and losers, and we get a bunch of teams in the mix, but you're going to miss teams. We will not miss a single team. We have missed a team in the past.
One time.
Yeah, apologies to the Buffalo Bills fans of 2018 or whatever. We promise that will never happen again. And if it does, it is the producer's fault. I think that is
Yeah, I think
put the blame elsewhere.
that type of
ATP.
accountability. Yeah.
But this post-draft one, we may have done all the way back to 2014. I think we've done this every time. Just
This one, yeah. This one, I think it's cleared. Eric, how are you?
Doing great.
How was your wedding?
My wedding.
Well, I mean,
I
you
did
went
go to
to
a
a
wedding. Yeah, I was
wedding,
like, I didn't. Yeah, no, it was good. It was a wife's coworker, so I was really not that invested. Had
Yeah.
some beers. Wife's
Nice.
pregnant. Didn't have to drive home.
This is a rough listen for them.
Big Funk.
I don't think they're listening.
Big Funk. Exactly. Bad beat. Bad beat. Big Funk did a nice job pinch hitting while ill,
Yeah.
which is never fun.
Didn't even tell us he was ill until the end.
He will find a way to work it in, though.
Although there was before the show started, he had a hot mic on while we were set up remote, and you could tell he was struggling and trying to get things going. There's a lot of stuff to do as a producer, and you could actually hear Big Funk's inner monologue going like, "Oh, okay, I got to do this."
Yeah.
But he made it through.
Yeah, it was a flu game for him.
I haven't seen him though since.
Yes, I did see him. We are
around.
neighbors, so I did see him.
Okay, good.
He's alive, but yeah, flu game. He was definitely under the weather on Saturday.
Okay, good. All right, let's. Without further ado, Claybon's got it out.
hosting Total Access all week. Check that out on NFL.
Oh hell yeah!
I will ditch them if it comes to it, guys. We're committed to all the teams.
If this is your first episode, that's cool. So this is the show where we go around an entire conference, 3 minutes per team, 3 minutes exactly. And I knew ETP wouldn't miss this show because this is when he gets to take out a weapon and literally shoot a man in the throat if he must to get him to shut up after 3 minutes. That's part of the rules right there. And I don't know why Patrick catches one in the gut there. He didn't need it, didn't deserve it.
It's all right.
Desk pop. What is it from?
Working on my tolerance.
Do not shoot anything into the ceilings here. The sky's already falling here at NFL Media. All right, let's get into it. Starting with the Buffalo Bills and Marc Sessler.
We're not skipping the Bills this time. The Bills, a lot of needs, 10 draft picks in total. Added help, though, at safety, defensive tackle, defensive end, cornerback, 2 new offensive tackles, a running back, and a wide receiver in Keon Coleman, who dazzled in his presser by announcing that his coat was from Macy's. Buffalo is attempting a soft rebuild from my POV. Call it a reload if you'd like, while hoping to remain one of the AFC's white-hot treats. I've talked for weeks, months, that I sense a darkness filtering out of Western New York, a tightening vice, an aura of internal pressure, outside doubts. This has been one of the AFC's best stories over the past half-decade. Only the deeply cynical can't see something beautiful about the existence of the Buffalo Bills. Yet, I have a hunch they'll find a way to crumble. Am I being too tough on our beloved Bills?
Oh, boy.
Yes, I push back against this whole idea that they are rebuilding, reloading, anything like that. What if I told you they have as much continuity as almost any team in the NFL? They have 20, I counted it up, somewhere between 19 and 21 starters on their team that were with the Bills last year. It's not an old roster. The offensive line is in as good shape as it's ever been with Josh Allen. They get Matt Milano back. Like, there's great continuity, and I know they lost a couple older pieces in the secondary, but the guys who are playing there were there playing for them, and they're young last year. I actually look at a pretty strong roster. And yeah, you lost Stephon Diggs, but other than that, this offseason, like, they are a team that has a lot of continuity, guys that were with the program a year or two ago.
They lost a lot of like veteran locker room leaders, and
Yes.
to make some of those moves, but we can't act like they lost no one.
I think this is.
But they have veteran locker room leaders, is what I would say still.
I'm kind of sick of having this argument too because just because a certain type of window for this team closed doesn't mean the people that are saying they can't contend. Like, but the Stephon Diggs, Von Miller when he was still good, Josh Allen on the rise, like that version of the Bills didn't get over the hump. So now they're making some adjustments and going at it a different route. I still can see them as the favorite in the AFC East, but this is a year of transition on some level, despite the continuity.
Yeah, the difficulty is being better than they were at their peak, and nobody's making the case that they are. But there could be some teams that come back. Maybe the Chiefs come back. Maybe this because the Bengals went through a similar situation in the secondary last year, right? And they eventually got better, but it's going to be a slow start. I think it's always a process to get back to where you were. The only part that the conversation comes in is, are you doing things that might deliberately hamstring your ability, and are you making those choices with full awareness of what the results are going to be? Nobody knows the results, but I think we can be confident in the Bills. But the reason that we have these conversations is because we're not as confident as we once were because of the decisions that they made.
Maybe this is where Odell Beckham goes. We've talked about that.
The Miami Dolphins with Patrick Claybon.
I am looking at the 2024 Miami Dolphins as I scroll back. So they came into free agency with a lot of questions on the defensive line, and then they got even more questions as Christian Wilkins made his way to Las Vegas. And so the injury for Jalen Phillips was in Week 12. It was a December 31st ACL tear for Bradley Chubb. And so you go into a first round where you're looking at the edges, and Dallas Turner, Leatu Latu, and Jared Verse are the productive guys, and they all go. And so now you've got a need, and you fill that need with Chop Robinson, who is the projection guy. Like, it's like, well, we hope that we can have Chop grow and learn and go into this season and become a better player, maybe 2025. But I don't know that you put the traits guy in the role of the production guys. And so I have faith in the offense, but Fangio's departure, the injuries on the defensive line, I don't know if there's enough pressure to be generated to make this defense what it can be for the offense. I have all the faith in Mike Mack and everything in the offense and Tua. I just don't know that the defense is it.
They lost 3 of 6 players that had 5+ sacks from a year ago, and they've got injured people coming off injuries. So they had a lot of needs going into it. I don't have a problem with them addressing it with where they were in the draft to do it. I look at the rest of their draft, and it's like I think their defense is a work in progress, but someone like Jalen Wright, who averaged 7.4 yards per carry and is very fast, like this is the kind of thing is going to work for Mike McDaniel, and they added some stuff on offense. But you're right. I think the defense is a question mark. And they, like the Bills, they're a different team on some level from where they were a year ago.
They have so many guys. Someone's got to get left out there. Mostert, Achane, Wright, Jeff Wilson's still on that roster. I liked what they did in the offseason in terms of like adding Kendall Fuller, Jordan Poyer. But you mentioned Chop Robinson, a bit of a project. Probably their second-round pick, Patrick Paul, was looked at like as a traitsy like guy that they were going to have to really coach up. So a lot of changes on their defense, to your point, including at coordinator. And I worry about their offensive line specifically. Lost some real talent, and they're counting on guys who have been hurt a lot, and really counting on Mike McDonald to coach up the offensive line and make up for a lack of talent.
And have they, in your opinion, of the group's opinion, some of the fade of the offense in the last couple of years is piping hot in September, not as hot by January? They didn't really address that. So it feels like they see that as a narrative, quote unquote, and they're going to be okay there. Are we confident that that's the case?
No. I think that there is something to that he starts off these seasons hot and they fade.
Well, yeah, it's like and also when they go into Kansas City and it's like minus 84 degrees, like they're not built that way, and that's not
like they could have taken the end of last year and be like, okay, what do we need to do to adjust it? And maybe it is the quarterback, and that would take another year to figure out. But that's a big question around this team. It will remain that way.
The O-line.
But
I don't think it's a Kingsbury style fade though. I'm not.
it's hard to do that.
The New England Patriots.
I said
It's you deserved it because you were commenting on his comment that was about that.
I shouldn't have done it.
I put a ribbon on it, or a bow, as they'd say. I don't know, one of those things.
Well, now you have a wound,
bow.
so use the ribbon
as a
the
tourniquet.
bandage. Yes, the bleeding, which is quite extensive right now.
That's efficient.
Just a heads up. The New England Patriots, Gregg Rosenthal.
Okay, I'm going to ask the question and then quickly answer it myself, hopefully. Is this enough for Drake May? Like around Drake May?
That was the most Gregg comment ever. Go ahead.
Love Jalen Polk. Seems like a Robert Woodsian type of guy that can step in fairly soon and contribute. Javon Baker was a guy people loved as a deep threat. He's a 4th-round pick. We'll see. The offensive line, they're going to have to coach it up. They take a third-round pick. They don't really have a left tackle right now. But it's pretty deep at receiver. Kendrick Bourne, Demario Douglas, Jalen Polk, Juju Smith-Schuster, KJ Osborne. Like, it's a ton of third receivers, but they do have at least a bunch of them. I tend to think if you add in Ramondre and Antonio Gibson, they have enough people around them, and they have Jacoby Brissett. I'm mostly worried about the coaching. That is Alex Van Pelt and who else? Like their quarterbacks coach, and then our old friend from New York. Why am I blanking right now? Who's on the staff too? Like, is the coaching staff gonna be good enough? Because it's, to me, a lot of discarded pieces at wide receiver and in the coaching staff offensively that have to like make this all work cohesion-wise.
I think Van Pelt's going to bring a Stefanski type offense, largely. And that's not a huge wide receiver.
But why was he the one guy that no one ever wanted to interview? And I was thinking of Ben McAdoo, by the way.
No one wanted to
his
interview
photo
for-
on the website.
because
He's
he didn't
still
even
rocking the
he didn't
hair.
call plays in
That's what I mean.
So
He's
there's
never
that.
called plays.
But I think it's interesting to see what happens with these wideouts because they kind of zigged and took like 5 straight offensive players. I liked the trying around May to build them up, but Belichick drafted 21 wideouts, and only one of them, Deion Branch, ever crossed 600 yards in a season. So it's like at some point you got to hit on one of these.
Well, Julian Edelman, but technically he wasn't a wideout, to be fair, right?
I mean,
Julian? Not a wide receiver.
I mean, when he was a draft prospect, he was a quarterback.
Yeah. Comes in quarterback.
Right.
They figured it out. It's all
a true wide receiver in the draft. So yeah.
Yeah, go back to the Chad Jackson draft, where I believe the Patriots took him 17.
Ethel Johnson was a second-round pick. Tyquan Thornton is a guy I didn't even mention. He was a second-round pick 2 years ago that I don't think is going to make the team.
But eventually, like, these things are going to even out, and the Patriots are going to hit on somebody. I don't know if it's a Belichick thing, if it was an evaluation thing, who knows. But the whole thing is a big question mark to me. Not just the coaching staff and this assembly, but it's not going to be worse than Matt Patricia offense. Like, it's not going to be change is going to be good in that capacity, and I think it'll give us an ability to learn. But before the season, who knows?
It will be interesting to track, Greggy. I know you will be tracking it closely. That the Pats moved back to take Jalen Polk at 37 when Ladd McConkey was there. So now you're naturally going to kind of be tracking both those guys and see who's the better pro.
There was a report they tried to trade into 32. Buffalo, or Carolina chose to trade with Buffalo, and then the Patriots moved back. So Mike Reese suspects they were moving up for either Keon Coleman or Xavier Legette, and then that guy was taken.
It's tough.
Tough sitch. We move on. The New York Jets. Deserved it.
You're just trying to be
I'm
punctuated
going
by
to
a
take a
dart.
timeout.
There it goes.
Give me that timeout.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to put a little bit of news onto the show. That
ATN Media Insider.
Gregg Rosenthal.
For the truth, go to
Greg.
Distasteful to take someone
Greggy in
else's
the morning.
bit that they made and repurpose it, but I'll let you have it.
An
because
original.
You couldn't come up with one on your own, so
would ever do
it's all
such a
yours.
thing?
And
You know.
Dolphin.
Oh, and we got breaking media news from the podcast that
Yeah, what do you got?
that our guy Bill Belichick will be a part of the Tom Brady roast that Marc Sessler is attending this weekend. And I am, for one,
Mark's
am looking
face.
forward to Bill Belichick roasting Tom Brady in a big spot at the dais.
It's funny. I was telling someone. I was telling someone, like, how do you have this roast without one of two people, if not both? Belichick showing up, obviously. He
Right.
seems to be doing the rounds. It makes sense for him. But also, I don't know, Giselle. I throw Giselle in there. She could, at this point, they can co-parent.
I
they can
I
post
don't
jokes.
think you're getting Giselle.
But we're
there.
getting Belichick, and I kind of had a feeling that was going to happen. And we've got a friend who's actually working on the production from a.
Well, that's why
We do.
this is exclusive around the NFL news.
And I always
We are
know-
breaking here.
I mean, as an insider, people shouldn't be able to know your sources immediately. I know exactly who your source was.
Sure.
Just wanna let
What does
you
that
know.
matter?
True insiders know who's getting the beef from where.
You sound threatened.
Maybe, maybe not.
Ben
But-
Affleck was listed as probable. They're not totally locked in, but it sounds like a Ben Affleck.
We have good seats too, by the way. I mean, we're not like
Great.
way up in the
Nice.
middle of nowhere. So.
It stands my original point that I made on Saturday night. You know, making Belichick go through these dances. Now he's at some dopey roast.
Well, but
tell
these
some
are
one-liners.
he's a grown man who is choosing to accept.
No, he's doing what
money
you're telling him to do.
He's choosing to accept money in exchange for having some fun or doing something.
Well,
It's a
people
job.
are getting paid for this.
Yeah, and P.S. The event that I'm going to is not dopey. That's your take.
Well, people, what, you think they're doing it for free?
I have no
Maybe
idea.
I don't.
My understanding of this
I
entire engagement, I would rather watch another 60 episodes of Blaze and the Monster Machines or Paw Patrol. I am interested in anything in the world more than a roast of Tom Brady featuring Bill Belichick or the Patriots documentary. I've seen enough Patriots. I'm done with the Patriots.
People are down on this.
Not
a fair
care.
point.
People are not pleased with this event.
I was surprised because when I told Emeka this, she was like, "Would you want to try to go?" And I was like, "This feels weird." I know. I don't.
Or you guys are all like too cool for this event.
No, now that Belichick is in it, I want to watch it. I'm
Too
going to
cool
watch
for
it,
it.
but I don't want to
I'm
spend
not-
our Sunday afternoon going.
I'm not too cool for anything. I would, again, anything on the planet. I'll go to an astrological convention. I'll have a palm reader. I'm not
We
interested.
can arrange that.
'Cause there's going to be clips on my timeline and people are
Right,
going to be like,
that's it.
oh, this is
But
so
that's-
cool.
That's where I stand.
So
No.
I say at least if I'm going, I don't have to look at any of those clips ever.
Yeah, but then you have to like sit in that chair for 5 hours because it's a TV production. There's some.
They'll get
Speaking
in
of
and out
post
pretty
Quiet Storm, Marc Sessler,
Yeah.
way on my radar, not in a negative way, but like you go to all these weird events now. Like you're always going to different things. This is
This is a good one,
this is a new Sessdog move as well.
This was a surprise purchase for me. So I'm not like, I didn't like, I want to go though.
Would you have gone if it wasn't purchased?
It wouldn't have occurred to me like to go, I don't think.
Well,
No.
will you be able to give us some boots on the ground reporting next
yeah,
week?
I was
Oh,
thinking
that's
I'd
good.
maybe like from the venue. So it's like the old WFAN NFL things where they report from stadiums, like get the crowd noise behind us and I give you a 2-minute report.
My guess is it will be brutally sanitized in the edit, so Tom Brady Corp doesn't let certain things through, but they can't
It's
get
live.
past Marc Sessler,
Or at least they
the
say it.
insider.
No, they cannot.
They say it's live.
Are you going to have to sign something?
Live?
I think so.
I don't think so.
You have to turn in your phone.
I won't do that.
Marc Sessler arrested Saturday.
Good scoopage, Greg. Like you are the Tom Pelissero to my Ian Rappaport, and I think that's a fair way to look at it. And just like Ian is not at all threatened by Tom Pelissero, nor am I. All right, time in. Nice. Have fun, Mark.
It was more like a halftime show than a timeout.
Where is it at the Forum?
Yes.
My God.
Yep.
That's
Wait,
a big
really?
venue.
Yeah,
That's a
never been
big-ass
there. Never
venue.
been there. So
That's huge.
Are you going to be in? What kind of seats do you have?
if I recall, they weren't like nosebleeds. They were pretty good.
Free parking. Perk of working with the company here.
Yeah, I could park in our garage.
Yeah.
It's the last remaining perk.
Up next, New York Jets. Real talk, as much as the diehards, right here, were locked and loaded on the idea of the Jets as a legit title contender immediately upon Rodgers' arrival last April, Aaron Rodgers. It's fair to acknowledge now, with the benefit of hindsight, that could have been seen as a stretch. Because exploding Achilles or no, the roster was flawed, the offensive line was bad, the skill positions shaky, and I think now the Jets have clearly benefited from the distance of the Rodgers honeymoon period, the influx of Aaron's guys who ultimately didn't work out. Mike Williams, huge upgrade over Alan Lazard. How can third-round rookie Malachi Corley not be better than Randall Cobb? Tyron Smith, Morgan Moses, first-round pick Ola Fashanu. Massive steps up from the tackles last year. I can't get these green, rose-tinted glasses off my face. You know that, so you're going to have to tell me, am I nuts, or did the Jets, dare I say, quietly have a great offseason?
I don't think anything about it's been quiet, but I do expect that it's going to be
I guess in relation to
like
last
when
year.
you get to training camp, once we finally get to the season, people are like, actually, this is going to be the year for the Jets, and they become like a trendy pick again because on paper, I think the roster construction is better than it was a year ago when they had all that hype, and they have some insurance policies. Like Alan Lazard, for instance, you mentioned, it's like he's
Backup.
still wide receiver 4, but that's kind of a perfect role for Alan Lazard.
Outside of Zach Wilson, Douglas has done a very nice job hitting on key draft picks, and I'm out. Last
Becton
year
was a disaster.
sure,
Right.
there's
And
been
jury's out on Will McDonald.
There's been a
but, yeah, I
couple
see your
misses,
point.
but I would say that this is not a surprise. I think the thing is, I want to see number one how the NFL responds to the Jets' overall world when the schedule comes out. I think it's going to be a little more caution than to throw them on 5 or 6 games. And
I think they'll be on 5 or 6.
I mean, I don't know though, because I think something feels more like a prove it year to me. But I do think, like, outside of maybe the fact they're gonna have to monitor Brock Bowers, who they passed on, which could have been a very spicy pick for the Jets. Like, I do think they're better. I like what they did.
They traded up for Corley, who is very similar to me to what Christian Watson was coming out of college and what Aaron Rodgers can serve, like a limited route tree, but a guy who can make plays after the catch.
And that's an important part where you can do things, and it's just how long is the adjustment period with Aaron to where he's wanting where Aaron wants him to run.
Right.
And it's, Aaron's tried to do that by bringing in guys that he's previously played with. I think it's a nice meld now of like Tyron Smith, like these veteran guys who are still like towards the end but can still be productive, as well as young guys. It's a lot to feel great about, but it's the Aaron Rodgers as well as his offensive coordinator, handpicked offensive coordinator. Is this going to work? And we have
that is one thing. Like Nate Hackett, show us why you're in this position on any level.
Timeout.
You knew that was going to happen.
So here's this. Check this out. On Friday morning, New York Jets coach Robert Saleh channeled his inner Sonny Weaver. This is a write-up from Rich Cimini at ESPN.com. Does anybody know who Sonny Weaver is?
Sonny Weaver is Kevin
GM
Costner's.
Kevin Costner's character.
Everybody knows it.
Right.
Using a line from the 2014 film Draft Day. Check it out if you're watching on YouTube. At 11:09 a.m., about 8 hours before the start of the second round of the draft, Saleh texted a photo of Malachi Corley to GM Joe Douglas. Underneath the photo, he wrote, "No matter what." Douglas immediately replied, "No matter what." My point being, first of all, congrats to my team. They wanted that guy in day 2. They got him. My bigger point is draft day. We've all talked about the movie on record, not a good movie by any stretch, but I have to give it pop, Patrick. It's got legs. It has a cultural footprint. People talk about it every year around this time. It makes me wonder, what if we actually made a good movie about the draft? That would be a classic. But even in its flawed form, Draft Day has an audience, and people have obviously been coming back to the movie, and I'm a little stunned, but good job by them.
I don't know how many people are still. We're referencing it. Are people going back and rewatching it?
Yes, it seems to be a thing.
Bit of a cult classic, maybe?
Around draft time, people watching. I still have yet to watch it.
Never
I need
seen
to. I keep meaning.
You don't need to. I'll give you a tip.
I just feel like people talk about it every year around draft day. That week, and people start watching it again.
So that means that Greg skipped the company event where they brought us to the Century City movie theater, and I remember Wes went, you went, we all went.
Yes.
Greg, hard out. Another thing you're too cool for. You were too cool for that event.
What year was that?
2014.
Yeah.
It sounds.
You saw a sneak preview?
Yep.
Yeah, well, it said the 2014 film Draft Day and what you read before.
Which then led to your iconic review of the film.
I will never do that again in my life. I was at my parents' house, and we had just gotten there. It was like these guys called me. And I had, I had a couple glasses of wine with my mom and dad, and then I'm like overly glowing about Draft Day. I wrote a paragraph.
But look at it now. Now it doesn't seem so.
What I said seems absurd.
Full of heart from start to finish.
Yeah, they took they took one little clipped part of it. There was some critique in there too, but it's like, let's take the little clipped part and make Mark look.
I just want to know how many front offices are exchanging these sort of texts, because it wasn't quite no matter what. 32 teams had the chance to prevent them from doing it throughout round 2. And they did trade up. They were trying to trade up.
Just like Sonny Weaver.
Right. They said throughout the second round, but didn't find the right deal. And then eventually they got Corley. But maybe this is happening everywhere, but then they don't get the guys. I do want to point out, though, Steve Smith had him as his number 10 receiver in the draft, ahead of Ricky Pearsall, ahead of Jalen Polk. And that just spoke to me, because I was like, in a perfect world, maybe Malachi Corley has a little Steve Smith to him in terms of his game. So game recognized game, similar styles on some level, that if Steve Smith liked him that much, that's a good vote of confidence.
It's very on brand that we've had 2 timeouts already. We're still in the AFC East, and they've come around the Jets and the Patriots.
Well, we got a Browns one coming up too, I'm guessing. To that point, Malachi was also a subject. Our friends at Underdog, Josh Norris and Hayden Winks, had a really good review of Corley, that he's been compared by some to Deebo Samuel, but he doesn't have nearly the explosive traits as Samuel, but he has the ability to maybe be a really good piece for them. All right, now we move on to the AFC North. But first, we take a break. All right, welcome back. We move to the AFC North, and Patrick Claybon is going to get us started with his Baltimore Ravens.
Yes, the Baltimore Ravens had all those departures on the offensive line, and they did ultimately take Roger Rosengard in the second round. But to me, the plan appears to be Ben Cleveland and Andrew Voorhees to fill things out at guard, which I love, is sticking with the plan. If you have that level of attrition on the offensive line, you can't just say, hey, we're gonna draft some guys and then have a bunch of rookies playing like that. That never works. So you stick with the plan that they have, and then they take Nate Wiggins. I know people had expressed some size concerns with Nate Wiggins, but some of that, he was sick before the combine. I think he played closer to 180. They needed to become more athletic in the secondary. My overall question about the Ravens is this continued attrition. The addition of an extra Harbaugh into the league has created more attrition. We've got a defensive coordinator that's a head coach of Seattle. You look around the league, there's more Ravens filtered out everywhere. At what point does it begin to accumulate and we start to see some effects?
You won't feel them as dramatically if they keep hitting on their draft picks and if Eric DeCosta keeps signing quality free agents late in the process. It does feel like the last 2 years, especially, it's amazing they got the 1 seed in a year that I thought last year was kind of a rebuilding year for them in terms of all the people that they left. Just in terms of team building cycles, I don't think they're going to be losing this many people every year, but DeCosta has needs, I would say, at wide receiver, edge, cornerback, and offensive line still. And so I think they will be adding more 500 snap type veterans that are just sitting out there than most teams.
And that has during these periods of attrition been something that DeCosta and before him Ozzie Newsome is still there, have done almost every offseason, and they tend to hit on those guys at a high percentage. So it's like I'm not out on the Ravens declining necessarily. To me, it's like I don't like losing Mike McDonald, who I think is going to be a awesome coach in Seattle, and maximize that Ravens roster in a way that you don't get every year. And so that's a big. I don't like coordinator switches in general.
I like that they locked up in a surprising move Rashad Bateman for a couple years, and I was like, why did they sign? They really are banking on Rashad Bateman, but it turns out he wasn't eligible for his 5th year option because he didn't report at the beginning. Said he was going to be a free agent, but he's now signed for 3 years, and they were really counting on him. I mean, he's their 2 right now. Tez Walker, who drove me crazy.
Sounds like a loophole for first-round pick.
Well, and I wondered about it.
Very Ravens-esque.
It's very difficult to utilize that loophole because immediately when I saw it, I was like, can players utilize this?
That's what I mean.
But it turns out if you miss any amount of time, then your league year can't accrue, whether if it's a mandatory workout. And so I guess in theory, somebody could get stuck in traffic and lose a year of accrual on that first day of mandatory. I don't know, but it's hard for players.
But Bateman's their 2, Aguilar's their 3. I don't really trust Des Walker. I mean, he was a dart throw in the 4th round.
I trust Walker Rosenthal. No, it's totally separate conversation.
Itchy trigger finger.
He is a insider on the rise, that Walker Rosenthal.
Am I on a podcast?
About what?
The NFL?
Does he have Ian's phone number too?
Maybe.
I thought you were talking about.
If he has access to Gregg's
I was
phone.
like, is this a Roger Rosengarten joke? I do like the Rosengarten in the middle.
Rosengarten.
You know.
All right, let's move on. All right, that was good. The Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals quietly took some big swings in their draft. We've talked about Amari Mims, a freakishly gifted, wickedly talented tackle prospect with just 8 college starts, but the potential to be an all-pro if it all clicks. It made me think of our old friend, Chris Wessling. His fantasy theory: don't settle for the sturdy floor, shoot for the limitless ceiling, and live with the potential whiff. Don't tell Chris Ballard I said this, but character concerns scared some teams away from Alabama receiver Jermaine Burton. But he's another example of a high-ceiling prospect. They even took a day 3 swing on a tight end, Eric All, who had that bad knee, and spine injury in college. Bad combo there, but we'll see if he's okay. The Bengals have shown skill in their acquisition of college talent. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. With Joe Burrow on the mend, a big draft could get them over the hump.
We talked about Jermaine Burton on our draft winners and losers episode. I think he slides in and plays a lot. I like this draft. I think Mims, it's kind of like they certainly have a type at tackle, but they also, I think Chris Jenkins is a good player who helps with a need. They gave the 3rd most yards per carry on the ground, that defense, a year ago. And they're like, defense kind of sneaky fell apart at times last year, and it's like they need help.
Right. They signed Sheldon Rankins. It's wild that there's a Chris Jenkins back in the NFL. Chris Jenkins. The dad was not like a highly touted. Was he a highly touted prospect coming out? But it was an absolutely ridiculous beast.
Biggest person I've ever seen in person.
The
Stepping into the newsroom.
The thing they have to be concerned about is their secondary. They decided not to use a pick there. Cam Taylor-Britt's coming off an injury, but you feel good about him. But after that, you're counting on second-year guys, DJ Turner, Jordan Battle, to really step up. Geno Stone is a bit of an unknown as a free agent pickup, and so a lot of questions in the secondary.
Yeah, if Geno Stone is the unknown, then that's I feel like Geno Stone could be a known quantity.
He could be great, but it's a
point.
guy in a new system, that hasn't always started 16 games, that sort of thing.
But I think it helps in evaluating, especially the newer guys like Dax Hill coming in, and how you're going to move everybody in the secondary. If you have somebody where it's like, we've seen him be successful in this, and so now we know a little bit more with the rest of our guys. But I think they were aggressive. Like, you could say that they were reaches. I'm with Dan. Like, they took the aggressive route, and we'll have to see, because you have to take chances in order to be successful.
Are we concerned at all about a backfield that is in theory led by Zach Moss?
No.
You got Chase.
I thought we liked Zach Moss.
I liked him last year, but that's 1 year where I thought he did come in relief for the Colts and looked good, but that's not been every other season for him. It's just it's a whole when they could batter people on the ground, that helped the passing game a ton.
There are very few guys who can handle the volume that Joe Mixon did in the run and pass game last year. Like, very few.
And last point, they got trashed in the trenches last year when they started 0-5. So 3 of their first 4 picks in the trenches. Up next, the Cleveland Browns with Marc Sessler.
All right, the Cleveland Browns have a 2-time Coach of the Year in Kevin Stefanski.
Oh, hell yeah.
If healthy, this is a wait and see, but if healthy, they have arguably the best back in the AFC in Nick Chubb. This is one of the best offensive lines in the conference. They basically kept everyone on defense, including Jim Schwartz, the play caller, after operating as the nastiest unit around a season ago. They've got a tight end in David Njoku, Dan's guy, coming off an autumn where he played like a star. There's a rash of Pro Bowl talent on this roster on both sides of the ball. And yet, we don't talk about the Browns as sitting in any sort of a Super Bowl window, or even as a top 5 team in the AFC for the most part. Is it just because of the quarterback? Because I think that's obviously the obvious talking point, but like, the Browns, to me, no matter the talent, feels like they're not in the conversation to go win multiple playoff games.
This is a great win now year for them. They won 11 games a year ago. I think you're absolutely right. Like, it's a veteran team. There's a lot of continuity. I noticed that they might be the only team in the NFL, someone out there tell me if I'm wrong, they don't have any projected starters that were drafted in the last 2 years. Part of that is the Deshaun Watson trade. Part of that is just how they've built their roster. So it's a team of guys who have been there, who have shown they're pretty talented. They got some questions maybe at like linebacker here and there, but for the most part, you're right. They should be good if they get the quarterback help.
And the quarterback help is presumably going to be better, right? Like,
they've shown they can be good with average quarterback play. He doesn't even need to be that good.
And so why not? Yeah, Mark's right. Like, why?
I think, you know what I think it is, Mark? I think it's the Watson tax that they're still paying on different levels, because not only is Watson now in year 3 after 2 seasons that one lost to suspension, the second lost to not playing at a high level, then getting hurt. You have a segment of the media and NFL fans that aren't really rooting for the Browns to be successful. And then there's the football component of, like, you can't win a Super Bowl without a good quarterback. And, like, we don't have any evidence that he is that since he put on this uniform.
No, because you have these teams out there. I remember the Rams were trying to do this before they got Goff and everyone else, was build a really great roster and do quarterback last. And, like, cool. But the Browns, I think, have done that under Andrew Berry, who's one of the better GMs out there. And it's like, but you went and spent more money than anyone on the thing that should have been like the absolute engine that starts this thing. And it's like, we're entering year 3 where we have nothing but increasingly alarming questions about the position.
The concern would be that Jim Schwartz's defense takes a step back. There's no reason why it should on paper, but just if you look at Jim Schwartz's career, it's had some big spikes. And like a lot of defensive coordinators, like, it's hard to keep that going year after year. But they're good. They're good up front on both sides of the ball. Like,
good team.
It doesn't help that the last thing we saw was them getting run out of NRG Stadium 45-14. I think that probably
a lot of turnovers, but
Tuffy. the rival of the Cleveland Browns, the Pittsburgh Steelers with Gregg Rosenthal.
All right, everyone loved the Steelers draft. There's a thing I saw where it adds up all the grades, and so it's consensus grades. And the Steelers finished first. Like, Steelers were uniformly A's across the board by investing in their offensive line with Fautanu. Maybe fell a little bit. Very athletic. Zach Frazier, who looks like a star. So you get two guys who can probably play right away up front. Roman Wilson is a receiver that can contribute right away as a third-round pick. And then Peyton Wilson, just a really exciting, talented guy that fell because people think he's only going to have one contract in the NFL. The quarterback is a thing, but when Mike Tomlin said Russell Wilson, Fields, Arthur Smith on our network, like, these guys have all been scalded. Am I a fool to buy in when Mike Tomlin says, like, they've all been scalded and they essentially got something to prove? Am I a fool to buy in that, like, man, this roster, I can see it.
No, he's a leader of men, that Mike Tomlin, and
He
when he
inspired
speaks,
me.
even if you are 1,000 miles away, 3,000 miles away, you believe. That's his thing. You ever have a fantasy draft? I think we all have, where you just feel like the gods are with you a little bit, and every time your turn comes up, there's something there that you want that's sitting there. And I feel like getting a tackle with the first pick, then getting a center, and then you get the wide receiver. We know the Steelers know how to pick wide receivers in the middle rounds. Then you add with a linebacker. Yeah, I trust them, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this team.
Yeah, like Daniel Jeremiah looked at the first 5 picks, and they were all value picks, and that's what the Steelers do when they're on their game. And Zach Frazier, especially the center out of West Virginia, like, I keep it over and over. It's like, this is a Steelers type of player at the core.
They won the consensus board game. You know how you got on Howie about that? Like, Steelers kind of won that too. But it makes sense how they're building the roster. If these are going to be their quarterbacks, how they're building the roster around them makes sense. And they might add another receiver. Bryant McFadden, who used to be on the team and is in the media now, said he heard they're adding another playmaker. There were reports that they were in on the Cortland Sutton conversation. I don't know who that would be. Maybe it's just like Odell Beckham, and that he could be a good role player for them. I don't know.
Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, same quarterback room. I forgot about that. That's crazy.
I'd play them both. I'd play them both.
It's gonna be wild.
Game after game. Just play them
It's
both.
gonna be a wild summer.
Just have them. I mean, everybody ends up playing anyway, right? So,
well,
it's very rare that somebody's gonna need a backup quarterback, and the Steelers are in a very, very good position. Definitely better in terms of their quarterback room than they have been in a very, very long time.
If the men involved are comfortable with, the arrangement, I wonder what the juice is going to be behind the scenes. Hard Knocks Steelers would be good.
Oh,
Everybody would say the right thing.
I'm getting those projected starters ready.
Oh, hell yeah.
Series. The first tough question was Fields or Russell Wilson. My gut is Fields. I just think he's better. So
They're saying Russell is the guy.
I'm with you.
But they're saying.
Mike T's gonna make the right pick.
Yeah. I didn't want it to happen to you, Pat.
Nah, that's okay. I want it.
You took it.
I was looking at the clock.
Brazen shot, by the way, too. Not a great.
That NFL Network polo actually has magical powers. It bounces the bullets off.
Apparently, all our shirts do.
Let's sell the bit more.
All right, I will from here on out.
You got a geyser wound in the
quiet, little quiet storm coming out.
All right, take a break. We'll be right back with the AFC South. All right, we are back. Let's move to the AFC South. Around the AFC, we are going around the AFC in 48 minutes. Hit the clock. The Texans. No picks in the top 40, but they address both sides of the ball in the second round. Georgia cornerback Kamari Lassiter and Notre Dame offensive tackle Blake Fisher. So after a draft that plugged holes at depth chart weaknesses, we spin forward with a team that has been widely favored to win the AFC South, make a deep playoff run. Stephon Diggs is in the building, so you add that. There was a upsetting incident around Tank Dell, who was involved in a shooting, but he appears to be okay, and that's great. Anyway, we're old enough to answer this question because we all know the history of this franchise goes back to 2002. Is this the deepest and best Houston Texans roster in franchise history?
I would say that it's number one, by far the best quarterback situation they've had. They're pretty deep all over the place. I think they have the best coaching staff they've had in the modern day NFL ever. And you look around on both sides of the ball, there's not a lot to not like. I think some of these they're young. They need these draft picks to come in and play a lot. But it's like, yes, this is the highest ceiling Texans team I've ever seen.
In fairness, we just talked about Deshaun Watson,
Right.
but before
was-
the madness,
Right.
he was a high-level quarterback. So by far feels strong, but C.J. Stroud, you can't quibble with how great he was as a rookie.
I'll stick with it though. But yeah,
I'll give the edge to the Texans team that had the 24-0 lead over the eventual Super Bowl champs
Chiefs. Yeah.
on the road. Like that was a very good team. I can't say because you look at like the Nuke on that team. There was JJ. I think was JD Clowney still on that team. They had like highly drafted guys that were producing in big parts of that squad, which they have on this one. I think I would be willing to make that case after this year, but they're very, very solid all the way through, and I just want to see.
Is that the 2021
Was it
Texans?
2020?
No, that 2019.
2019,
they're
sorry.
just growing up very, very fast. I don't know where the ceiling.
Hey, Texans fans out there thinking, hey, how about that Matt Schaub team that went 12-4? That was a good team. Had J.J. Watt at his
You said Matt Schaub, though.
Yep, had J.J. Watt at
Shout out to
his
Matt Schaub.
absolute peak. Andre Johnson.
All due respect.
Two Hall of Famers, though, at their peak with Andre Johnson and J.J. Watt and Arian Foster at his peak. It was a fun team.
Those teams used
that
to
went
get
out.
wiped out in the
Yeah,
playoffs.
and
though.
then they weren't. So I do think you look at their offensive line and their secondary, and Texans fans are so high on this roster. And I do think, look, they drafted a right tackle, Blake Fisher, that was kind of after a big drop-off at the position and hoping maybe he can play right away. I do think they got a little unlucky with a couple cornerbacks going or defensive backs going right before Lassiter. I think the secondary and the offensive line, they're hoping to be average. And so I don't think they're totally all the way there. This was a team, that was just building. But with C.J. Stroud, anything's possible.
I'll take it. The 2019 Texans. Nuke, as we said, Kenny Stills, Will Fuller, rookie Laramie Tunsil, I believe, or young Laramie Tunsil. Let's see.
No, because he had come over from.
That's right. He came from Miami's. DJ Reader is there, young Reader.
Yeah.
J.J. Watt, still at a high level. Yeah, that's a very good roster.
I will take this coaching staff over what
Yeah,
Bill
for
O'Brien
sure.
was offering.
For sure.
and the front office.
All right. Up next in the AFC South is the Indianapolis Colts with Gregg Rosenthal.
I'm into this team. Looked around at I was just curious, like the division odds. We're not allowed to do stuff like that, but
We're not?
Colts.
I
plus-
am confused.
I mean, we're allowed
thought
to.
we could.
We're allowed to look.
In your private time, you
Colts plus 330 to win the division, third behind the Jaguars. This, to me, is a team that has just been fine for a while, and they took some big swings on some real talented players in terms of A.D. Mitchell and Laiatu Latu, and then you get the extraordinarily talented Anthony Richardson
Wickedly
back.
talented.
It's a very talented team that was right there
Wicked.
with Houston to end last season, despite not having a quarterback. To me, they're 1A, 1B. I see them as closer than the rest of than those odds would indicate, and I see them ahead of the Jaguars by a decent amount. Do you guys think they're ready to win now?
Yeah.
win what? Because they
The
did
division.
one lap.
Division.
No, I think the Texans are gonna find a way to win that division by
But
at least 2 games.
What if, now you got this quarterback back. If he turns out to be the guy that he hinted he was and that everyone fell in love with, that then is the X factor that takes this team and really does make them at the level potentially of the Texans. They're a very interesting team to track. Chris Ballard's the GM, so I like that too.
Yeah, and so much. This was a team that almost was in. This was a team that was in it against the Texans with Gardner Minshew at quarterback. And considering the growth that we saw from Richardson at the start of the season, I have every bit of reason to believe that they would have been a better team if Richardson finishes things out. It was just,
I mean, he's
Well, thanks,
he's a
Jimmy.
bit of a TBD. It's certainly fascinating, but I think that Ballard, he does not move off of what he wants to do, and I know that they've had a tough time finding the quarterback until maybe now, but they already were like the 5th best pass rush win rate team a year ago, and add Latu to that, and they were. I remember I tried to make this pitch about them being an interesting team a year ago, and people weren't buying it, but it's like. On a weekly basis, that defensive front was beating people up. So if anything, if you can get to Stroud and Trevor Lawrence and the rest of the quarterbacks in this division, you got a shot.
Pretty good line. Very intriguing defensive line, adding Latu to that mix, as you mentioned. Secondary is a concern. They're very young there, and they're hoping their second-year guys develop. But I just liked the coaching. Not so much Gus Bradley. I think he's solid. He's a good defense coordinator, but Steichen gives me confidence that this team just felt like it's like it's kind of average, and then now maybe you add some exciting draft picks in Richardson. That's the little sprinkle on top of this.
I think that's
Sleeping Giant
to me like they were commendable for fighting through everything last year, staying in the mix to the very end.
Right.
But obviously lacking something that gave them sizzle. That's Richardson, hypothetically. And our buddy Chris Ballard, who we listened to the other day, listen to this when the first defensive player in the draft falls to him at 14. Here's his reaction.
This video coming from Colts.com, Dan.
15 feet. We had the best rusher in the draft.
How about that cackle? With the hair slick back? I love this guy.
Oh, I think he looks better than he's ever looked, and he's chuckling in the middle of the war room.
He's comfortable. He's swearing and newsers. I love it. More Chris Ballard.
Look at that. I'll take the dart. Like now I'm looking at his hair from the side shot. This is conditioned. He's put money into this hair.
Like I said on Saturday, he looks about 12 years younger to me than he did at other points in this Colts run.
You know what he's I know, Mark.
What?
I know you keep saying it. I know. But I'm saying now he's almost, I think he's trying to crib off Les Snead a little bit. He's like cribbing off the notes of Les Snead physically. Look.
It's very much Tom Brady's long
Take a look at this coif.
I don't think so.
And listen, there are
Wait,
worse
I want to hear
GMs.
more of why you made that face.
Well, I mean, that's a stretch.
I think he felt like you were comparing someone to the GOAT and Les Snead.
No, I'm just saying.
Too big a reach.
Les is like a 9 out of 10 physically. I'm not saying that, but.
No, and I think Les puts more energy and attention probably into his particular look than Chris Ballard does. This looks like this is slick back hat, take off hat. I'm inside. I'm among
hard
people.
disagree.
Really?
Yeah. As a hair guy,
no,
that's not accidental.
Okay.
It does tell me like significant other or a female presence at some point encouraged him to euthanize the look, not euthanize it.
Euthanize his old look.
Yeah, to youth up, right.
Well, I believe him and his wife have a lot of 5 children.
They do.
So
They've got a lot of kids.
I thought you were going to say have separated.
Him and his wife have
No, I'm just
good. Many
big
kids.
family.
Some, that maybe speaks to a potential midlife crisis, but in a good way. Like, and now he's like, look
It
at me.
doesn't seem like he's in a crisis.
Yeah, it seems like he's comfortable.
He's dodged a lot of Colts crises, like very effective.
Kind of come out the other side.
Very true. Very true. All right.
That was a timeout.
I don't know what. Listen, I didn't hear a dart. I didn't hear a timeout. It just exists in the ether.
I mean,
it's just,
Eric has understandably just said,
He's
there's no consequence to anything.
That wasn't
on
very
this
much about
production.
the team. It was more Ballard's
there
hair.
it is. See, great judgment by AT. Hey,
Trying to be, less trigger happy this episode, guys.
you know what? You're maturing. You're about to become a father.
Yeah. Can't be throwing darts around at people for no reason.
Don't be firing guns as a new father.
Jaguars of Jacksonville with Patrick Claybon.
Thanks, guys. I'm confused.
You're welcome.
I'm not really sure. I love Brian Thomas Jr. I think he gives the Jags some field stretching capability that they kind of tried to halfway do by committee with everybody else and put Calvin Ridley in weird situations that didn't necessarily seem to suit Calvin Ridley. He's a real, true top-end speed guy that I think with a healthy Trevor Lawrence will be successful. But I'm looking at the rest of the picks, and I don't really know what necessarily Trent Baalke's plan is. I know they bring in a linebacker coach from LSU. I'm blanking on his name. I think Matt House, perhaps. So they ultimately take 2 LSU defenders who were highly recruited guys. One of them very athletic in Mason Smith as well as Jordan Jefferson. But this LSU defense never stopped anybody the entire season. And Jaden Daniels and Malik Neighbors and BTJ, like they're running up and down the field scoring 1 million points. They could not stop anybody. And so it was just a very confusing conglomeration of choices considering their needs, right? Because they're very solid at the edge. I believe Travon Walker is going to have the growth, but I'm not sure what the plan is. What do you guys think the Jacksonville Jaguars plan is on defense?
To amass as many guys who look great coming off the bus. That's just Trent. That's Baalke ball. That's Trent. That's what he wants.
The Bartek heads know.
That's what
They
he
all
wants
know.
to do, and it hasn't worked that well. And their secondary, to me, is a huge concern. Like, how does this team stop the Texans and other good passing teams? They drafted a guy, Jerry Jones, in the 3rd round that is, wasn't that highly thought of. They are the anti-Steelers and Eagles in terms of the consensus board. After the Brian Thomas pick, which I thought was savvy, great trade down, loved the pick. After that, Balky's off on his own island, taking guys rounds before they're expected to go, and that's just how he rolls. That's Trent Balky.
He's the opposite of what we're talking about with Howie Roseman.
Right.
Got his own world.
Yes, he does. I think they are a bit of a, like from a Q rating angle, just because the South went from like floating garbage to like white hot in like the course of a calendar year. Because, a year ago we were fascinated by the Jaguars and not really questioning the team building at that point. And they'd been active in free agency on wide receivers, paid them a lot, and it worked. But it's like I don't think you can survive in the NFL with a C- or very big question mark cornerback room.
One small bit of news, relatively small, not for Zay Jones, is that they released Zay Jones on Tuesday. So they're rolling with Gabe Davis. Devin Duvernay is there too, is like kind of wide receiver.
I think it could help them a little bit. Everyone dismissing them at this point, and expectations are very low around this
team.
team.
They care about that.
Everyone's falling. We just talk about two teams, like
second in
the
Vegas,
Texans
though. Like
and
I
the
said,
Colts.
actually, they had the Colts behind them for what it's worth.
Right, but cognoscenti.
Mm-hmm.
The does that mean? Doesn't matter. Cognoscenti thinks, but people aren't. I got it. I understand. And I deserved it. And it hurts. Okay. The Tennessee Titans with Marc Sessler. Ain't nobody pumping up the Titans, but should they be, Mark?
Well, they weren't able to nab garage door size tackle Joe Alt like 99% of humanity thought they were. But I do think that getting J.C. Latham out of Alabama, because we trust Alabama, helps a lot. Their tackles last year had a 49.3 pass blocking grade per PFF, second worst in the NFL. They allowed 64 sacks last season, fourth most in the NFL, 160 over the past 3 years, third most. That's why Ryan Tannehill was on crutches when we were in London getting carted off and we saw him in the tunnel. Remember that? But now you've got Latham at left tackle. Big old boy Pete Skoronski at left guard. I like him a lot.
Large.
Lloyd Cushenberry, 3 at center. And Magic Man Bill Callahan tutoring the group. So they got an identity, and I like that. I don't get Devondre Sweat in round 2 because he essentially got like a DUI right before visiting with the Titans. Seems like
That was a play.
Okay.
No, he just got drunk.
Very much TBD on that one.
Yeah.
But I think you've got a team that we knew a year ago had a desperate need along the offensive line and the wide receiver position. Now you've got DeAndre Hopkins. You got Calvin Ridley. Treylon Burks is a good 3. I like him in that position versus where he was having to be before. We'll see. But it's a better situation for Will Levis. But are you buying into the Brian Callahan Carnival of Love?
Is there one existing? Is there a...
I've just called it that. Maybe that's why you can say you don't buy into it.
I'm buying into Lloyd Cushenberry 3 being his nickname.
I don't say the third. I just say 3.
Yeah. LC3. I love it.
For a long time, he would always call him Roger Griffin 2.
RG2. Or 3.
We'll just keep an eye on their decision to not take Rome Odunze there. It's funny because Adam Schefter reported or intimated that Joe Alt was going to go to the Giants if
Saw that.
he hadn't been taken. Rome Odunze, you pass on him to take Latham, and then you pass on the receivers that were left in the second round, and there were some intriguing ones to take Sweat. So that's just something I'll keep an eye on because I'm not convinced that DeAndre Hopkins at this point in his career and really like you could have added another weapon. By the way, Ryan Tannehill's still a free agent. Come on, Raiders.
Interesting.
Well,
Raiders.
I just put him under the Raiders too. As like that is why are you not like why is he still sitting out there? Give it a try.
Is he maybe pondering some things right now about his future? I don't know.
Get this Tannehill
See,
sweepstakes
no,
going. I love
Got
it.
beat up a little bit.
I think he just didn't get any good offers. And maybe might be a guy who waits till training camp. I do think he gets a job.
Wait till
at some
after
point.
training
Not a
camp.
starting job.
Right.
but
Flacco
a
it.
job.
You know?
Yeah.
Go full Flacco. It could pay off.
It can.
Anything else about the Titans? Tough one. Not as much juice.
They're very
around this
much
one.
of all these teams. They're very much in transition. There's just a lot of.
I mean,
transitional
there's still
pieces here.
major questions on the right side of their offensive line. The defense on paper looks good. They have another one of the Ravens kind of assistants, Denard Wilson, coaching them up. I believe in Brian Callahan because he brought his dad there.
I'm with you.
Shout out to dads.
Hey, wait a second. Wait a second. Now you could take your own issues with your father or whatever's going on with the Roberts house, but you don't dart a man for speaking positively about his old man. It's out of bounds, Eric.
Mark said it was more on Mark's
I
comment.
think he
I'm
was
with you,
aiming
yeah.
at me for
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
agreeing with someone
No,
else about
cool.
something at the
As
tail end of that.
as a soon-to-be dad, yeah, dads are awesome, guys. Come on.
Patrick Claybon, do we trust Alabama implicitly in all ways?
Wait,
or
wait,
I don't know if it was the
it's people,
university or I
Oh,
wasn't
I was
sure.
saying the football program, like in the Nick Saban era, like these guys come out as ready as from any
Right.
university.
How about the
The
state?
state? Come on,
From Patrick.
we don't know.
Yeah, I mean it's 4 million people. All with hopes, dreams, and desires, and yeah, I think you got a good shot, just as good a shot as anywhere else. How about
Couple
that?
question marks there.
Yeah, I mean there's a
Some
few.
of the
We got some.
civilians.
We got some.
Where did you grow up,
I got a
Patrick?
QAnon next door neighbor, so they're all over the place.
Where'd you grow up?
Wait, in LA you do?
Absolutely.
Oh.
I had weird. No, okay. So full disclosure.
All right, let's just take a timeout.
Yeah, let's take a timeout.
Cute
All right.
man guy.
So
No, we're in a transition period of the show post the division, so we don't need to. We're good. We're good.
there's
Yeah.
there's a guy on my street who has his own newspaper, right? And he passes out newspapers to a select few houses, always skipping ours, mainly because I didn't necessarily want him going through our trash. But anyway,
Okay.
yeah, that's another thing that he does. So I go to the breezeway.
Wait, how does he go through?
What is
trash?
going on here?
He walks down the street. He opens people's trash cans and moves them and like reorganizes trash. And I have no idea why I avoid
Reorganizes.
Yes.
So you told him not to.
Yeah, I'm like, hey man, we're good on the trash. I'll put it in the street and then I'll take it back. Like we're good. I don't need you messing with our trash. And so
A fair request.
yeah, so that was 4 years ago. Things are still weird. But one day, one of these flyers floated into the breezeway, and I pick it up. It was like full on Aaron Rodgers for 5 pages of the most inane and impossible things. And I'm like, what? And then I look, and I see, this proliferated through the street. So yeah, I say that to say you may think that you're in a place that's in a bastion of sanity and people have yard signs that say love and support, but those people are not your friends, and those people exist from sea to shining sea in this union.
It's a great point, Pat. There's a newspaper that those free newspapers you can open up and just take them, little community newspapers.
There it is.
True journalism.
Santa Monica's got a couple of them, and I used to take them because sometimes you see, there's Walker's friend and his soccer team won the 10 and under youth championship of Southern California. Oh, this is cool.
Very nice.
And you float through it, and it's mostly pretty normal. And then every once in a while, you realize the Santa Monica Mirror is actually like a hard alt-right organization, which just sprinkles in like little things every once in a while. So it's everywhere. Everywhere.
Mark?
This guy, Patrick, is that a weekly paper? I mean, it sounds like a lot of work. So does he have
No, it's-
stringers and other correspondence?
It's not every week. I'll see if I can get some evidence. Maybe I'll tweet it out. Maybe I'll go. I've wanted to take one from somebody's porch, but I feel like that's a boundary cross.
Do you ever think of creating a competing
Yeah.
independent
A
newsletter?
counter newspaper.
Because it's not subscriber based. He's just putting it on people's property.
He's walking
Right.
out and he's hand delivering this paper to.
And Patrick Claybon's not getting a copy.
No, nor do I want one.
Right.
Nor do I want one. I would like
I
him
want
to stay
one.
away.
Curious.
This feels like its own podcast, just tracking this neighborhood now.
Yeah, this weird neighborhood
Powder keg.
situation.
Bring one in so we can just assess what's going on here.
I'll try to get one for you, Mark.
Okay.
I'll try to get one.
Let's take a break and we'll finish out the AFC.
Full of heart from start to finish, delivers on the great tension of the NFL draft while showing how human the entire process is. Marc Sessler, NFL.com.
You're out of your mind.
Yeah, I am. Haven't I proved that already?
That would have been a sweet spot for the company just to wave goodbye to me. And they, lost opportunity.
I guess what I'm trying to say is you kind of were proven, even if you were a little more over the top than you wish you would have been. History proved that it was not a forgettable film. It is very much in the discourse, at least every spring.
For us,
I'm taking the L on
Not
it.
for the
I
reasons,
thought it was
not for the
completely
reasons that I mentioned.
well. It was a little strong again, but I thought it was draft day was not only forgettable. I thought it was a huge missed opportunity, and yet here it is, 10 years later.
Well, people can go to NFL.com and read our,
They can find it.
He said, like column, right? If it's still, who even knows? But you had some
Scrub.
supportive words. It wasn't all F-
Yeah.
from you.
Read between the lines on it. You could tell what was going on.
Read between these lines.
Let's head to the AFC West with Gregg Rosenthal.
What team am I?
The Denver Broncos.
Okay. Broncos.
I mean, we're all a little shaken up by the Patrick Claybon neighborhood story.
A lot of new narrative.
Which, by the way, not for nothing, when we went to break, we got some more details that are not for air on this media group platform, but wild. It's actually even darker than you'd imagine.
All right, let's restart the clock
Stuff
here.
that wouldn't happen
What is
in
happening?
El Segundo.
All right, let's restart the clock.
Sorry, Greg. Go ahead. The Broncos with Gregg Rosenthal.
So Sean Payton improved this offense from 28th to 19th in the league. Like he did coach them up a little bit, considering they, by every metric possible, they had a top 10 offensive line and basically bring back the same group. The wide receiver group, which you've heard Sutton is maybe available, is Cortland Sutton, Josh Reynolds, Troy Franklin, which is a fun dart throw, but it was a 4th-round pick. Played with Bo Nix in college, but ton of production, and Marvin Mims. Does Bo Nix if Bo Nix is good, does he have a chance to be good with this group around him? And more importantly, like, have they helped him enough with the defense, which fell off a cliff with Sean Payton arriving? They were 30th in the league in terms of DVOA.
The only thing that has thrown me for it, because it was like Jerry Jeudy was on the trade block for like 42 years at one point there, and they finally made it happen. Now it's Sutton, and it's like you're down to Mims, Greg Dulcich, and it's like of the landing spots for quarterbacks, because you're Bo Nix, and so you're not Caleb Williams to begin with. I do think could be very productive, though. I don't dislike Bo Nix from what I watch, but I'd say this: like, it's not a great landing spot, except for the fact that like Sean Payton, when he's at his best, levels the entire offense up because of who he is.
Sean Payton plus a good offensive line
that's it.
Is a
like,
good start.
Like it's not the situation that happened with Bryce Young in Carolina, because you have coaching that you believe in and maybe some structure and the ability to protect. But yeah, they're not going to build Rome in a day here.
No, it's going to take time. I wonder, I'm looking back at the Zach Wilson trade, and I know it's just $5 million, but considering the cap situation, it feels like $5 million that the Broncos really didn't.
Jets are going to pay, I think, a big chunk of that.
Okay, well,
we never got the follow up, but that was
we did actually. It was, I think, what was it, $8 million, and I think they took on like 3.5, something like that.
Okay. Well, then 3.5 makes me feel better than 5, but I just don't
Still
know.
seems like a lot.
Because it's a lot to live up to, and it feels like, considering the way that Russ made plays in spurts. I know Sean Payton and the Broncos weren't necessarily happy with the way that it was, but how does a rookie quarterback adjust to those expectations that it feels like Sean Payton has for the offense? And if it's not him, how does Zach Wilson, how is anybody going to live up to this idea of what a quarterback should be in this offense when the idea is one of the best people to ever play the game at the position?
Right. I think having a coach this great at getting kind of like mid-level quarterback talent, which we've seen when Drew Brees wasn't playing for the Saints and even last year, to be productive is great. Plus an offensive line is great, but a defense really helps you out. And I look at their defense. It was a bottom 5 defense in the league last year, and I don't really see a ton of reasons to believe that they're going to improve significantly.
The defending champion Kansas City Chiefs with Marc Sessler.
I think the Chiefs did exactly what the fan base demanded, if the fan base is allowed to demand anything at this point in time. But they moved up to take the fastest wide receiver in league history, in Xavier Worthy out of Texas. They grabbed a tackle, Kingsley Suamataia, out of BYU in round 2. Those were 2 needs, but I really like the Worthy pick. Lance Zierlein described this tackle, Kingsley, as a thick-framed gentleman with adequate length. Sounds intriguing. But now look at this offense. Right. But now look at this offense. You got Worthy's 4.21 speed. And what I like about it is it takes some heat off of the concept of Hollywood Brown as being whatever he would have been. And it's like, he's an added weapon along with, we'll see Rashee Rice at some stage. And all this makes me kind of think, like, after we were wondering if Travis Kelce, who's just had his deal extended, was like, is this guy going to retire? Does he look the same? Like, it's a good for Travis Kelce.
2 more years.
2 more years,
right.
and it's like you got people around him that's going to make like, wait a minute, we got to deal with Travis Kelce on top of all this speed. And so I kind of just wonder, and I feel like I ask this all the time, that is like, is the entire regular season just like a dog and pony show, leading society exactly where we know we'll be come next February. Because I think the team got better.
I think the Chiefs, despite winning it again 2 times in a row, they've won the Super Bowl. I have questions to answer to me on their offense, and the moves that they made make sense. None of them, like, I know the guy's the fastest guy in the combine ever, but I'm not like locking him in as a star, and Hollywood Brown's never been a star. And Travis Kelce, like, let's not forget, he looked slower and older last year. So what version do you get of him? So are the Chiefs going to be back to their high-flying ways? I'm not convinced. I'm interested to see what they look like this year.
I think there's a lot of cause for optimism because you consider what are they replacing, right? Like what are the departures? L'Jarius Sneed, of course, being A1, right? This is the guy that made plays where they probably wouldn't have been in the game in the Super Bowl if not for L'Jarius Sneed. So that's the one. But other than that, you take MVS and replace him with Worthy, right? You've got Hollywood Brown coming in to fill like what you wanted Sky Moore to originally do, and now you get a veteran to kind of fill in that spot. You keep Travis Kelce around, even though it's not really an extension. It's essentially just a raise, like a hey, thank you for being Travis Kelce, which is cool. Shout out to them. Do that for everybody. Yeah, they're the Kansas City Chiefs. They're inevitable.
I think Worthy is a more complete player than a 4-2-1. Like, he was a guy who has great movement skills. He's just small, but he landed in the spot to make him a star. They have more weapons. They have great continuity on defense. I counted up. I think they're going to start 7 different players from the class of 2022, which is crazy. That's how you keep a dynasty going. 4 in the secondary. They take this kid, Jaden Hicks, who was very high on Dane Brugler's board in the 4th round. He'll probably wind up starting. That's the Spags secret sauce.
They have 13 wide receivers.
And to put a bow on what you said, once you get to this level, this rarefied air, yeah, it's just about getting through the regular season. Win your 12 or 13. Hopefully the quarterback's healthy when you get to January.
Well, while we're taking darts here, I saw the report from the Chiefs' Nate Taylor on The Athletic. They tried to trade up for Amarius Mims. They were trying to get that tackle. So left tackle is a big concern. Suamatia, he's like the 14th tackle off the board. The guy might be a little bit of a project. They were hoping to get Amarius Mims. Didn't happen. They wound up with Worthy.
Timeout. I have a question
I
for
thought
you.
that was a timeout.
We just took darts. We were taking darts there. We got a little game for you guys. Here you go.
All right.
Here you go. And here you go. Pen. You need a pen?
Dan is giving us paper and
thanks
pencils.
for that. I don't have a pen, so I appreciate that.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
All right. Jim Harbaugh. I mean, he's a huge figure. He's a dominating figure. Been very busy. Over draft week. And everything else. Hit the music, Eric. He overshadows everything else. Let me tell me, who is the general manager of the Los Angeles Chargers?
Joe Horowitz, I think it is.
Okay, you're supposed to write it on the paper.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Mark was wrong, though, so.
Yeah.
Write it down, please.
All
right. Reveal your answers. Patrick?
Joe Ortiz.
Joe Ortiz.
Oh, dang. I had Horitz.
I had Horowitz, too.
But you said Horowitz.
Horowitz, but I mean, it's,
The correct answer is Ortiz.
There we go.
Claybon. I think Jeopardy rules, although you guys had the right name in mind, Patrick is the one that gets the credit. I think the reason I asked the question is because Jim, he's the son there, and it overpowers everything. But he was the director of player personnel for the Ravens, who left his brother, Jim's brother, to join the Chargers.
Nobody.
And with that said, the Chargers. Jim Harbaugh and Joe Ortiz had a very busy draft week and offseason. They added 9 rookies in the draft, another 20 in undrafted free agency. Per The Athletic, over the past 3 months, the Chargers have added 39 players to their roster who were not on the team in 2023. Joe Alt, awesome big S, big P statement pick by Jim Harbaugh. A generationally talented tackle by a coach who calls these guys skill players. He views them that way. The offensive line and running back room has been rebooted. Justin Herbert loses Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, but gained Ladd McConkey this over the weekend. And I have a sneaky, promising tight end pairing in Will Dissly and Hayden Hurst. Kind of like both those guys, and now they're a tandem. My big question, Okay, and you have Gregg Roman's the offensive coordinator. That guy loves running the football. How Harbaugh is Harbaugh gonna go with the Los Angeles Harbaughs? I'm sure Justin Herbert has the same question.
I see. I think there's increasing versatility here because Ladd McConkey, I think, is just an awesome pick, and they spoke so highly of him and how he can help Justin Herbert. So that's through the air. Joe Alt is someone who looks to me like he came from like biblical times and like fought kids with slingshots. Junior Colson, I thought they were gonna take a bunch of Michigan guys, but like he's someone that wore like the green dot for Michigan and can lead a new defense, and he knows it really well. So these are fits that I think improve, but how hard will he go? It's like, are we going to suddenly see Justin Herbert vanish as a passer?
That's what I mean.
I just
like,
don't
I'm
think.
curious how they're going to do this on offense
I think
scheme-wise.
it's just being overstated because that's an impossibility in today's NFL where you're going to suddenly take Justin Herbert and have him play like a half of the position that any quarterback was playing.
Well, also the running backs are Dobbins and Gus Edwards. Just, if Dobbins can get healthy again is intriguing.
Ravens U.
But
it is.
You're also asking. I don't love that. Everyone's so excited about Joe Alt. I'm sure he's going to be great, but the first thing you do is make him play a position right tackle that he's never played before. That they should be noted. I mean, they know what they're doing obviously more than I, but like that has worked plenty of times. Worked with Penei Sewell. It doesn't always work.
I think we can expect to see some interesting route combinations, some receivers in close proximity to each other. Diminished numbers for Justin Herbert and a team that. We've seen it happen before. A new coach comes in, you get a mix of the old guys as well as the new guys, and something does form that I think the Chargers will be better than Herbert with literally no hands last year towards the end of the year. But I think the Harbaugh ceiling isn't going to be reached.
But coaching plus offensive line plus quarterback is like more important than the weapons. For those years that Tom Brady didn't have any wide receivers, we kind of learned you can still have a great offense if you have great coaching, great offensive line, great quarterback.
Tom Brady, all-time great quarterback.
Right.
They had the worst
It's
run
Herbert.
blocking grade in the NFL a year ago. That's going to change.
Let's close it out with the Las Vegas Raiders and Patrick Claybon.
The Las Vegas Raiders, I believe, wanted a quarterback. They go into the draft and they see literally every quarterback go before them. They, I'm assuming, have some calls about trading up. It doesn't ultimately work out because the Falcons take their future quarterback for some reason at number 8. I think because they liked him too. And so I think they got a great pick in Brock Bowers. I think taking the best player on the board is always a very good idea. But it's going to come down to Aiden O'Connell as well as Gardner Minshew. And that will be the camp battle.
Woof.
At what point do the Las Vegas Raiders look outside of the building to bring in somebody that keeps everything from falling apart and Devontae being like, why am I playing football still?
Yeah, I think this was like they got left out on draft day, and I know they love Brock Bowers, and there's nothing not to like. Like, I don't dislike that pick on any level, but it's like, it's a new coach, but this gets coaches fires when you think in like May or April, May, you can roll into an NFL campaign with these two quarterbacks because it's about midway through the second half that you realize that plan's a disaster, the first game. And so you mentioned Ryan Tannehill, someone like that. If you just want like a veteran who can come in and like spice things up, I think that's a good landing spot. But Minshew, we just talked about with the Colts, like he is he's a fringe starter, but like that kind of team last year with Minshew.
It's a bridge guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. We just don't know where the bridge is going right now.
Minshew is their Tannehill. So I've been thinking about it again. It's like they gave him $15 million guaranteed. They gave him a sneaky amount of money. They did not sign him to like a Baker Mayfield in Tampa. Just let's see what happens backup contract. They gave him like, hey, you're probably going to play for us. And Aiden O'Connell was okay. I don't think this is going to work out. They wanted Michael Penix Jr., our James Palmer, our guy. He reported they were one of the teams that tried to trade up for a quarterback, and it was going to be Penix, and it didn't happen for him. And they ended up with Bowers, who the Saints Block Party podcast reported the Saints were going to take at 14. So I love these like paths not taken, but the Raiders end up taking Bowers.
I think one thing that's maybe slept on a little bit, I think Raiders fans, whether or not he's a high-level quarterback, are going to love Gardner Minshew because he plays with a lot of pluck and moxie.
Yeah, he fits there.
Kind of like got some Ken Stabler in him, and I think that's going to be they're going to have fun rooting for him. It's just how much can he actually give you? We'll see.
Antonio Pierce has been very vocal, saying we're going to run the ball and we're going to be a great defense, and I believe that's his vision. Like whether that works or not, like we'll see. But Bowers to me fits that vision. Playing 2 tight ends as your base set him and Mayer having multiplicity, and they really think the defensive improvements they had will carry over. That's
And
where
you
I'm a
survive in
little
your own
skeptical.
division, though, because it's just like how, you should build to beat teams in your own division first, and they don't resemble that kind of a team to me right now.
Signed Michael Gallup on Tuesday officially.
There we go.
Friend of the show.
Is he?
Best friend. No, he was on the show.
Very nice guy.
Not an enemy of the show, but I don't recall. Yes, you're right. I forgot that we
From Cowboys
forged
camp.
friendship with him.
In fact, everyone we sat down with at Cowboys camp was cursed as a result.
Leighton Vander Esch
Leighton Vander
did
Esch,
not fare well.
Michael Gallup. And I think even the voice of the Cowboys, didn't he miss some time? Didn't he? Yeah, right? ETP?
Yeah, I forget what. I think he fell down to an illness.
He's not
late-
gone, though.
No, not gone.
Right.
But he
Sweat,
did.
yeah.
He did miss a game for the first time in like a very long time. I remember seeing that because we play their highlights, obviously.
Brad Sham, the Sham God, has missed games due to an illness. So
He was forced to announce yet another playoff defeat to the Green Bay Packers. So that, I'm sure, was
Brad Sham, the Sham God, I fell ill en route to the game. I was advised to get it checked out, testing and resting, looking forward to next week. That was December 1st. And we're very happy that Sham God is on the mend and we're not making light of illness, and we never would, Greg. However, I'm just stating the point that everyone that sat down with us in August of 23, it didn't work out. on
Connect the
some level.
dots, right? Sure.
Which leads me to my next point, that we will hope to take a summer road trip this summer to visit a team, and hopefully it's not yours.
Saints are coming to Irvine, spending
There we
training
go.
camp in Southern California. That's a little
What does the Saints block party think about that? Us coming with the cursed medallion of ATN. They don't need it. They don't want it.
I'd keep us out of there if you were interested in the Saints or their fortunes.
You probably know this one, Mark. Remember the Brady Bunch episode with the medallion when they went to Hawaii?
Yeah, two-parter.
Bad beat.
Two-part episode.
Bad beat.
And one of the rare, you don't get Brady Bunch episodes that were filmed literally on location outside of a set in like Studio City or something like that. So
Right.
an atypical Brady Bunch double two-parter.
Greg, Brady Bunch was a sitcom in the
I remember it.
1970s.
I remember the repeats were on. I did not check them out
It was a tiki necklace.
before our time.
Tough one. It really wasn't, because Brady Bunch was massive in the 80s in syndication. and
Right, but
reruns.
you didn't have to watch it. There were
You don't have to watch it. You don't have to watch it.
Right, that's what I mean. There were
Like,
other,
we don't have to
Yeah.
read the newsletter going around Patrick Claybon's neighborhood, but it's out there.
I made
It's in your face.
decision, which I look back on as the correct one, to dedicate my time to other programming.
Let's hear it.
It's a good call.
Let's hear
Cheers repeats. The Ricky Lake show was into that.
it. Ricky.
Sally Jesse Raphael guy.
Not really, but here and there.
That's a good one, actually, for the people like in our age. What were the syndicated 70s, 80s shows that you were watching that maybe weren't out when you were kids? For me, it was Brady Bunch. It was Different Strokes. I watched every weekday at 5
These were
p.m.
out for me
on
when I was a
Fox.
kid. But
Oh,
actually,
that's right.
My screenwriting teacher created Different Strokes. That's why he was in.
Did you see him park his Rolls Royce before he came into
I
class?
think he did very well.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
A lot of MTV now. That was probably not.
Oh, yeah.
Alternative Nation, Yo MTV.
I'm talking
Raps.
like pre
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
era.
Like Nick at Night, like Bewitched, Dick Van Dyke.
Three's Company,
Mm-hmm.
Three's Company.
Good Times.
We've made Patrick late for his.
Oh, Patrick,
Oh,
we
sorry.
apologize.
That's all good.
Thank you to everybody for listening. We'll be back Thursday with a special guest. This is still on, right?
Yes.
Jordan Rodrigue of The Athletic, who does an excellent job covering all matters of football, including the Los Angeles Rams. She'll be joining us to go around the NFC, including those Rams. But thank you, Patrick. Anything else to add?
Yeah, momentum might not be real, but you are. No matter what anybody says, no matter what I say, you and your existence are true.
Patrick
and
of
we
applause.
love you. Thanks, guys.
Eric, give him the goddamn applause.
No, don't applaud for me. Don't applaud for me.
Where's that button on your...
Applause is a long word to type out, so when I search things, it's
how about
like,
clap? Change it to clap.
okay, applause is the one that tends to give me trouble the most.
Thank you,
So,
Patrick.
move
And
it
be
up.
careful in your hood. Until then, everyone, check us out Thursday for the NFC. And you know what you got to do. Do you want to tell the people today, Greg? What do they need to do? Right on your arm.
Let me just pick what does it say. Oh yeah, keep the call.
Bang.